Welcome to the Riff. Today on the Riff, Jeremy and Justin finally talk about Jerry Springer. We hope today is helpful and hopeful. Thanks for listening.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Riff. Justin.
Yes, sir.
When I say yet another, can we just pause and say we're in the 200s?
We are in the 200s.
I remember when we got to episode 132, and I thought, that still seems like a long way away.
It was.
Yeah. But over 200 now. So,
man.
hey, glad you're here. And if you're joining us day of,
A lot of people said it couldn't be done. It'll never be done. A lot of people said that.
We said that. We said that. But look at it. It's done.
It's done. All right, keep going. I didn't want to interrupt you. I was still on that.
I was going to say something like, I like to warm up on the Riff.
Yeah.
So I was going to say something about it's June, right? And all these kind of things and whatnot. But we're glad you're listening. Do we take it for granted? Do people listen?
I don't.
No.
Do you?
Sometimes.
Yeah, okay.
I do.
Yeah.
However, I snap out of that little hubris when someone does say that they listen. I'm like, oh, that's nice. It's nice. So anyway, we're going to riff today. I think it's just a touch. I would say that I'm feeling a little vulnerable on this riff because I shared, as we just discussed before you hit play record. Do you hit play record or is that I'm going back to the 90s?
No, it's just a record button.
Okay.
And then when you hit record, it's play record.
Okay. So you had said, hey, what do we want to riff about? I threw out a topic and I can see through your facials. You did a great job with your verbals, but your facials did let me know I'm not seeing a direct line between this topic and the potential of this riff episode.
I usually try to tell my face, match my words.
Yeah. No, this one
I could feel it wasn't.
It wasn't. But let's go for it. So the topic is Jerry Springer.
Yep.
So your face is doing a great job. Yeah. If you're watching,
big smile.
Yeah. So now why I say I have some vulnerability in this is I think when I say Jerry Springer, some of you might quickly judge and say you watch Jerry Springer.
Did you watch Jerry Springer?
I have watched Jerry Springer. Would I say I'm a Jerry Springer watcher? No, it's no longer syndicated. Have I watched it in the past? I've seen it. Who hasn't? He's a 1990. Have you?
Listen,
have you seen Jerry Springer?
Springer, he was big when I was in college.
Okay.
And there was a season that I'm not proud of. Okay.
We're about to get canceled.
That I watched Jerry Springer on a rhythm.
Are you so serious?
It was like opening a bag of Cheetos.
Yeah.
Eating that Cheeto and being like, I don't think I like this, but for some reason, I'm going to go for another. And then by the end of it, you're like, that whole bag's gone.
Yeah.
Hey, we need another bag of Cheetos. Why would I say that? Well, we don't need Cheetos. Those are horrible for you.
They sound delicious.
And this was the story of Jerry Springer for me.
Time out. Yeah. And we'll get into this maybe a different episode. Are Cheetos bad for you?
I can't imagine they're good for you. I can't imagine if you put those up against the banana and the nutritional value would be like equal.
I heard eating a banana in the morning is about as health beneficial as eating a Snickers bar in the morning.
Who told you that?
Snickers.
Yeah, I thought so.
CEO. So I'm just kidding. Okay, so Jerry Springer.
Snickers CEO?
You didn't tell me that. I'm
John Snickers.
I'm snickering just thinking about it.
Snickers.
Did you know that Snickers is still the number one leading candy bar in America?
Is it really?
Yeah. I think so. I said it in a message. At one point, I Googled it, I think. But it used to be and still is. People just like their classics. Okay, so Jerry Springer.
Okay.
So we've seen the show. It has been described very similar to what you just said with the Cheetos. They use the analogy, it's like watching a train wreck. Now, I've never seen a train wreck, but I did read about the one at Silver Dollar City. That sounded terrible. Right?
That did sound terrible. Right off the track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're being distracted by the three actors who are acting like they're robbing you, and all of a sudden, boom, it's a real tragedy. And you're like, which one's the fake one? Which one's real?
I always get scared during that moment. Like, are they really robbing us?
Again, this might be for a different episode.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought how would you want to rob a train at Silver Dollar City? Because I sure have. And you know what my solution would be? Bring 2 other friends, memorize the shtick. They would think that you were
Just one stop before that little stop right there.
Yes.
I.
We would be in Kimberling City before they knew what hit them.
You think over the bridge or at the bridge?
At the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's where I would stash it.
For sure.
Under the bridge.
For sure.
So, okay. We still have time? Okay, Jerry Springer. So, Trainwreck. Oh, yeah, that's how we got on this. Snickers, Trainwreck. So, now here's there's a whole documentary out there on Jerry Springer now because they say he was like a 1990s cultural icon, and his show I think went from 1991 to I don't know 2000 something 15 or something, I don't know, but it started out. What's interesting is I saw part of this documentary. And then it sent me on a rabbit trail. I started Googling this guy because, and I want to bring it around to church. So let me tell you a little bit about Jerry Springer for those who might not be familiar with Jerry Springer. It's smut. It is smut television. Yeah, that's exactly what Oprah would say. Oprah did say it. It is trash TV. Jerry Springer says this about his own show, that he hates the fact that he lives in a country where his show could be the number 1 show in daytime. He's like, that just says a lot about our country that we have to live in. So basically it would bring in people's personal crises and oddities and weirdness to the stage, and everyone loved to watch it. So here's a little backstory. In 1991, I believe it started, and he had been a little bit of a politician in Cincinnati. He was the mayor for a year in Cincinnati, Jerry Springer. And then he was for at least 10 years. He was like a local news, Emmy award-winning news anchor. Serious, legit deal. And he starts this talk show. He's always interested in politics, wanted to run for Senate and different kind of things. And so he started this talk show in 1991 in Chicago where he wanted to talk politics, and it was super boring. It was a very old audience, a very slow moving talk show, but that's his personality. And they have ratings. They would say, I forget the name, the sheet that they would get every day of the yesterdays. It was a big deal back in those days before the internet was crazy, where it was all about how many viewers watched your show. And there were 18 major shows in the daytime that was in his category, right? Oprah was number 1 by far. 8 million people a day would watch Oprah. In whatever these ratings were. And he was constantly 17th or 18th, his show. Out of 18, just super boring.
It's not great.
I mean, it's not great.
It's not great.
No. But I would say, hey, you made it.
did it.
You're on TV. You get paid, right? That's cool. So very boring show. They're now being relegated to like 1 a.m. People, like we'll throw his talk show up there, but it wasn't getting any play. So then he hires a new producer. Producer comes in with a philosophy, and this is what this this documentary was talking about, and how this producer comes in, and his whole deal is everything about this show needs to be about the ratings. The ratings are determined by how many people from the outside will be entertained by the show. This is not the mission of Jerry's show. Jerry started with this thought of, I want to talk about hard-hitting topics of this day that make a difference. I'm going to talk about politics. I'm going to talk about legislation. His whole mission was to talk about something that matters. And now all of a sudden, like 4 years into this, total philosophical change. Let's talk about what is entertaining. Give the people what they want. And so they started putting up some things that would be about conflict, some things about relationships, things about sex, things about all these other topics that would be different. And people started watching. Their ratings started to climb. And it became a circus. And they described it as, this was like the Roman Colosseum. And they described it as the lions versus the Christians, right? In the sense of it was so morbid in history. You look back and you're like, how did people get entertained by watching that tragedy? But that's how they filled the stadiums. And they said that's what they were doing every day on the Jerry Springer show. So the producer's being interviewed. That's crazy. Producer's being interviewed, and he's talking about the pressure they have to always come up with. Sometimes they're sleeping in the studio, the producers are, because they have to fill 200 shows a year. And so for them to get these crazy stories, there were some times where they didn't know what was coming tomorrow. They just knew it had to be a train wreck. And so they're doing all types of advertising. You got any dysfunction, you got any weirdness, you got any oddity. They're trying to figure out ways to get people to call in with their story. And so here's where it gets super dark. So Jerry Springer's already dark. Here's where it gets darker. And then I want to talk about how it gets darkest. Okay. So darker is these producers, they say, okay, there's this triangle. They call it the Springer Triangle. And it's where they get 75% of their guests, not on purpose. Just as they look back at the data, 75% of the people that came in onto their show as guests came from this triangle area of rural America, like mid-America. People who felt like they were very odd and they had a story to tell. And they would look at Jerry Springer as the guy that can fix them. And so they would apply. And it's interesting how these people, they literally looked at this as this is going to be helpful for me. So maybe we're talking about crazy stuff, relationally, crazy stuff, just a whole bunch of dysfunction. And they think that me calling the show is going to help me. The producers would say, we need these people to think we're going to help them. So we send a limo to pick them up in their small town. Most of them have never been in a limo. They fly them out to Chicago. Most of them never been to a big city. Limo from Chicago to a high-rise hotel. Treat them like crazy. Feed them real well. Give them a ton of free alcohol. Give them the kind of money they need to if they're into, a lot of people who are guests in there are into like drugs or something. Like let them get hopped up on whatever they like to get hopped up on. And then at 5 a.m, wake them up from their hotel, bring them into a studio. And from like 6 a.m. to like 10:30, 11, they're grilling them, like interrogating them, giving that like in a room with a producer who's saying, hey, if they say this, then you do this, and getting them hyped up. They say, so then what happens is they've got no sleep. They've got a lot of chemicals in their system. They're already dealing with dysfunction. They got a desperation they're going to be fixed. And then we throw them into a cheering audience that they think is going to all of a sudden be on their side. But when they get out there, they realize the audience is jeering them, not cheering them. And so it messes with them psychologically. And they say, we're pushing all the buttons and we get them. They're just boiling by the time they get out there. And then all of a sudden a fight happened on the set. Well, the ratings went crazy. So then they realized we just need fights all the time. So as they're looking back, they're like, this is terrible. One day, they have a couple on, and this guy's got this other extra out of bounds relationship, and he surprises his wife on the set with his extra relationship, and they all get in a fight, and it's great for ratings. That night, they leave, and there's a double murder that night as the guy ends up shooting both of these gals that stemmed from this fight. And as the producers talked about this, they said how dark it was and how one of them was talking about how it's such a bad part of his life that he looks back and he says, we milked these people for the stories they had because it's what people wanted, but we were really not helping these people at all. Matter of fact, in a lot of senses, we were hurting these people because they shared their darkest part, their journey, their story, just their life. And what we were really doing is just using that for our own benefit. We got rich on these stories, and then a lot of them walked away not being helped at all with the illusion they were going to be fixed. And it was just painful watching that. And so it takes me down this rabbit hole of Googling like all this information about the show and why would America think the show is awesome and why do we eat it like a bag of Cheetos, right? Yep. So anyway, then I started thinking about church. And what are some ways that if we're not careful, we're not valuing? Because I look at this and say, man, how do you take someone's pain and you use their story as a way to make people feel a certain way, but is it always helping the person who's sharing their story? And as a pastor, it should make all of us, as a follower of Jesus, should make all of us feel like, are we taking care of the people who have pain? And at North Point, we're a church where we have the opportunity to see a lot of people make a decision for Jesus. A lot of people have a life change story. But it made me look back and say, okay, hey, what are some things we're doing to make sure someone's ready to share their story? What are some things that we're doing to help someone who does share their story not feel like or be used? Because that story does feel great to thousands of us who listen to that story. We're like, that's a powerful story. That's awesome. Because when you shared your story, it made me feel a certain way. And that's awesome. But I would never want to neglect the fact that someone's sharing their story, and that makes them vulnerable. And what are we doing after the fact? As a church, as a staff, what are we doing as if I'm a follower of Jesus, and those who are listening to the Riff, some of you might understand, like you hear a story, what responsibility do you have as a follower of Jesus when someone shares their journey? Is it possible to follow up, to connect, to encourage? What does that look like 2 months later? What does that look like 3 months later? When someone gets baptized, we're cheering it on. Like the last baptisms, we had 98 people get baptized, which is awesome. And that's a lot of stories. At the same time, what are we doing today to encourage and resource those 98 people and the 363 people last year and the year before that? What are we doing to give everyone a chance to continue the growth? Otherwise, we're guilty of the same thing, of using someone's story for us to feel good about our ratings or whatever. And the church is not about ratings. The church is not about attendance. The church is not about what it makes us feel. But if we're not careful, even with what sounds like spiritual intention, we might not be cognizant or realizing the need that we need to provide. So anyway, Jerry Springer.
Well, just behind the curtain, right?
Yeah.
Like I've been able to be a part of a lot of those stories and listen to those stories and help people walk through those stories. The creative team does a great job with all of those. But one of the things that we do notice is there's an added pressure.
Yeah.
Every single time that somebody shares a story, and I'm speaking specifically for North Point, the church as a whole, we show it on a screen. There is an added pressure for that individual or for that family. And a lot of times we have seen reverse actions from that story. Because I think that there's two things. Number one with Springer, why did I watch it in college? Because it's so fascinating. You're exactly right. Like when I've gone to the Coliseum, I would be like, no, I would have had a ticket. Right? Like, because there's like something in your psyche and like that I'm like, I'm so curious, I want to see.
Yeah.
Which is probably like a darker side of me. The lighter side is that church element where I'm like, I want to see the completion.
Yes.
And knowing that both of those sides are not complete. Like in that dysfunction, there's functionality and there's a soul, right? And in this like complete story, and it's like, yeah, it's finished. It isn't finished.
Right.
Like there's still like these things that are, so I think that our mind wants these like black and white, like, whoa, I want to watch this because it's bad. I want to watch this because it's good. And being able to be a part of a lot of these stories, you realize that all of these stories that we share are life-changing and Jesus is moving.
Yeah.
But that's the key, moving, not moved.
Yeah. Continuing.
So what you say is like, what is the step afterwards? What is our care? What is our role as a church? And not just as staff, but as the person that says, North Point is my home. I'm going to follow Jesus. And I really enjoy this story. What's the role of that person? I don't think that we've probably identified that well. I think that we celebrate that story. It's awesome. And then I think it's just kind of like an organic or natural like care system for them afterwards. So and the word organic, it makes me nervous because typically when it comes to leadership, if we call something organic, it means it doesn't exist, right? It's our way to be able to still sleep at night. And the thought is, we could sometimes, whether it's a graduate or whether it's a baptism or whether it's a life change story, sometimes we could celebrate it like it's a graduation when actually it's an initiation. And should we celebrate an initiation? Absolutely. Absolutely. But we also need to equip
initiation, right? And, kindergarten graduation. Did you have kindergarten graduation for your girls?
We did not.
You didn't have graduation for them?
No, I don't believe in that. You would graduate when you graduate.
I love that.
Okay.
They didn't register at Toys R Us or anything?
You got 12 more years. Buckle up.
And that's exactly what I think is sometimes we treat if we treat a kindergarten graduation like a high school graduation spiritually. And what we need to understand is no, what you need now is you need a whole lot of next steps. You need a community of people that you're going to walk through, that you're going to fail with, that you're going to be challenged. You're going to need mentors and teachers and instructors. And what we don't want to do is, and again, we've done episodes about this. If you've been paying any attention at North Point the last year, you'll realize we are not abandoning finding Jesus. We want to find and follow Jesus. We want to be a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus, and we will never abandon finding Jesus. That needs to be a clear central focus. But if you've been paying attention, you've seen so much intentionality of how do we help people follow Jesus, and one of them is this epiphany we're talking about, that we cannot let someone's first step fool us into thinking they don't need a next step. And while they're probably very aware they want a next step, we don't want to inoculate ourselves into thinking, I love how you said that confuse that Jesus has moved to Jesus is moving. And so now what is my role as a church? What is my role as a friend? We also live in a day and age where people aren't lining up to come to a facility 3-4 times a week, like maybe my parents' generation did, whether it's the size of the city, whether it's 2025, whatever it might be. So it's not going to be get into these 4 classes all the time. So how do we, in a mobile, portable, busy generation, help develop community and tools, intentionality for people to grow?
Yeah, and I think this happens everywhere. This doesn't just happen like on the screen at church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like I would think if you're listening, think back to the times that you've sat down with somebody for coffee, or you sat down with somebody for a dinner or a lunch, or you're just working side by side on a factory line and someone tells you a story. Like, what's our role and responsibility after that story is told?
Yeah.
Like right now, there's a guy that I work outside of North Point with. I'm helping train this kid, and he has got a story. And I have just like racked my mind. I'm like, there's a role and a responsibility, and I still don't know what it is. Like I get kind of emotional with it because I'm like it's a heavy story, and how do I know it?
Yeah.
Like they're telling it to me because I'm either a safe place or they're hoping for something.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm like in this space of like I should, but I want to. Like, how do I help? Like, what's my role and responsibility now that I know that story? Now that the story has like changed my thinking of, oh, that is a hard situation. I've never thought of it that way, right?
Yeah.
So I think that this goes past just like watching Jerry Springer go into church. I think this is day in and day out of, what do you do? Like, what is your role and responsibility?
Just, and that's the thing that jumped out. That's what stirs the conversation, is seeing the vulnerability of someone sharing their story and the lack of care or follow-up to them is what's so striking.
Yeah.
And so maybe if you're listening, you've got someone who's shared with you. And I know from my time, anytime I've shared with someone, something vulnerable in the sense of like, hey, here's an area I'm struggling with. Hey, let me tell you right now about my marriage that I'm not thrilled about right now. Like, not that you'd share inappropriate, but if you're saying, hey, this is a struggle, man. I don't feel like I'm showing up to my kids in the way I want to, or to my wife in the way I want to. You share something, okay? That's a big step. And rarely is it met with, please don't talk about that kind of stuff. Usually it's very polite. It's I feel like I shared it to a safe person. But after the fact, next day I might be like, man, did I overshare? Was that helpful? And what could be helpful for me is a follow-up text. Or next time you see me, hey, really appreciate that you shared that. How things going? Any update? And what that would communicate to me is it matters to you. Whether it's something I'm struggling with, something that's happened to us. And so why I share that is there's been times where I know I've not followed up with someone's gold of trust, and what didn't mean I didn't intended for them to feel that way, but it doesn't matter what I intended if they feel like, my story wasn't important. How do we value someone's story? When someone shares their story with you, follow up. Maybe today you text someone or you look for the next opportunity to say, hey, just wanted to follow up on how things going in a very non-judgmental, non-pressure way, but just say, hey, I was thinking about you. Really appreciate that you shared. Any update?
And I think it's helpful. I think it's Brene Brown. I think she talks about vulnerability hangovers.
Okay.
Have you read through her stuff? She's
great. That doesn't remind me.
I might be wrong on this, that it's Brene Brown, but vulnerability hangover is this whole idea of somebody getting into a space, being extremely vulnerable, and then actually going a step further because they feel safe with the vulnerability that's actually being shared with the person.
Yeah.
And then after the fact, going back and then thinking, I cannot believe I just shared that.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that on the flip side, when you do say, hey, just thinking about you, I don't think it's weird or awkward if they're like, oh, no, it was fine. It's fine. It's actually not a big deal.
Right.
It probably is. So continue to dig in.
So what would you say? So let's say I felt like nervous about what I shared with you as a friend, though. I looked to you, I shared something, and then I felt nervous. You followed up, and then I say, hey man, no big deal.
Yeah,
no,
no big
it
deal.
Actually, you know what?
It's fine.
Thanks for letting me vent, but it actually wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
What are some practical ways to give me another on-ramp?
I think then be vulnerable back. Right? Oh, yeah, man. Hey, thanks for sharing with me. Yeah, that was cool. Put that conversation to rest. Then have another conversation. Hey, Jeremy, listen. I know you said it wasn't a big deal, but it got me thinking about a story of mine. And is it cool if I just share something with you? Be vulnerable back. And I think that's really the only way not only way. For me, it's a really great way to say, hey, I see you, and we're actually one and the same. I also have insecurities and vulnerabilities that I don't like to share. And thanks, man. Because, man, it reminds me of, and then usually they'll open back up as well.
Yeah.
And it lets them understand oh, it really was safe. It's okay. And this really is a big deal. And my marriage really is hard. And then it becomes an actual conversation. So I think there's just a back and forth on a micro level, and we're talking about macro level as well, right? Of seeing it on a screen or seeing it on a TV or a tablet.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's super helpful. One of the most valuable things someone has is their story. And so, I'd say, so personally, let's be the type of people where others want to share their story with us. Then let's be the type of people who so value the story that was shared with us that we follow up and steward that opportunity well, steward that relationship well, follow up and encourage that person. And then the corporate part, the job part is, how sick. I don't ever want to be a leader of an organization that would just look at people as story factories so we can keep the mission fueling, right? Mm-hmm. Give me another story, give me another story. And obviously we haven't, it wasn't like that, but it makes it's obvious when you see something as twisted as that Jerry show that, man, a church could be like that even unintentionally if we don't value the person that shares that story. We don't value the person who steps into that baptism tank. We don't value the person who writes that card of prayer requests. So I don't want to be the guy who's like, that's so awesome. 67% of our people filled out a prayer request last week. Right? That's not the metric. The measurement of health is, what do we do with a story that was shared with us? So it's good for us to be uncomfortable with even our larger systems that are going to have to be a little bit more intentional than organic. How do we do that as a church? But individually, how do we do that as individuals? I think that's great. So Jerry.
To that, I think we got to be unapologetic in having those metrics.
Yes.
We want those connection cards.
And we want the stories.
But I think that's the understanding of getting the connection cards and hitting 67% and high-fiving is the start of the work.
Yes.
Not the end.
because the point of it is to be able to partner with someone on their journey.
Right.
And that's why, like, when the mission was to hit hard-hitting, it's so tempting to get off course, change your goal, change your metric. And then if you start looking at the wrong metric, in this case, what do the ratings say? Then you could end up in the wrong destination thinking that you've arrived.
Right.
And let's not do that. So anyway.
Were you about ready to chant Jerry? Is that what you were doing right there?
I was chanting Jerry.
You were chanting
Jeremy, Jeremy,
Oh,
Jeremy,
no, it's
Jeremy.
they're chanting
One of the
Jerry.
things I did like about that show is they really kind of set the tone. And I think if people would come out and chant, you know, I just, can you imagine?
I can't.
My first 30 seconds of sharing the word of God.
That's going to be powerful, man.
No,
That
sit
is-
down, everybody. Sit down.
No,
Sit down. Sit
stop
down.
throwing
Today
stuff.
we have a
Stop
great show for
putting
you.
chairs down.
Open up to 2 Chronicles. This is going to be powerful. Here we go. All right. Thanks for putting up with another episode of The Riff. And I can't wait to see what our topic is next week.
Can't either.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.